There is a small island of the coast of Senegal. A wooden door faces the ocean there. What if I told you millions of Africans walked through that door and never came back? I've been there before and I was like, what's going on? Not neighborhood. I walk around all this island. I guess I was up there and like look at the island. I mean, they lock it. Today is Sunday. I should have. But that's definitely not where the story even get more interesting. Because before that island, before France took the coast, before anything else, there was a king. A king who looked at French soldiers building a railway through his kingdom. And he said, no, not with words, with 20 years of war. This is Senegal, not the postcard, the real one. Okay, long before any European ships sailed down to this coast, there was an empire here, founded somewhere between 1150 and 1350 by a legendary leader Njanjan Nje. It stretched from the Gambia River all the way north to the Senegal River. There was a lot of kingdoms, and each ruled by their own king, all paying tribute to one central empire. This wasn't a handful of villages. This was organized power. Trade routes carrying gold, ivory, hides deep into the Sahara. Then, in somewhere 1549, internal rivalries split it apart. The empires broke into separate kingdoms, strong, proud, and independent. And 350 years later, one of those kingdoms would produce a king who refused to bow to anyone. His name was Lat Dior. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this name correct. Anyways, by the 1860s, France controlled the coast, Saint Louis, Dakar, and Gorée. But inland, in the kingdom of Cayor, a young king named Lat Dior had a very different idea about how this was going to go. France wanted something specific from Cayor, not just land, not just tribute. They wanted to build a rail from Dakar to Saint Louis, a railroad that would let France move peanuts, Senegal's most valuable export at the time, through their ships through the heart of Lat Dior's kingdom. Lat Dior understood exactly what the railroad meant. It wasn't progress, it was a leash. Once that railroad cut through his land, France would never need a permission again. So Lat Dior refused. For over 20 years, he fought France, not in one big battle, in dozens of them. Raids and bushes traced into the bush, negotiations that collapsed, wars that restarted. He converted to Islam in 1861 and built alliances with religious leaders who shared his resistance to French control. He became Damel, king of Cayor, not once but twice after being driven out and coming back to fight again. For 2 decades, this man made France pay for every kilometer of track they wanted to lay. By 1886, France had grown stronger. At a place called Declay, Lat Dior was maneuvered into a battle he couldn't win. He died there December 26, 1886. But I think France could never erase this. In Dakar today, there is a giant statue, not of Lat Dior himself, but of his horse, Malau. Decades later, Senegalese people still remember the king who lost the war but who made the most powerful empire. And today, Senegal's national football stadium carries his name, Stade Lat Dior. Now, while Lat Dior was fighting in that, something else was happening on a tiny island I mentioned earlier of the coast of Senegal, Gorée. Less than a square mile of land, fought over the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British, and finally the French. On that island stands a building built in 1786, Maison des Esclaves, the slave house. Small holding cells, barely room to sit down, and at the back, a small wooden door opening directly onto the Atlantic Ocean, the door of no return. I've walked there before, like I told you earlier, and I want to be straight with you about something. Historians today actually disagree about exactly how many people passed through Gorée. Specifically, some research suggests other ports move far larger numbers, but that disagreement doesn't change what that door represents, because Gorée became the place the world chose to remember. Presidents have stood in that doorway. Nelson Mandela stood in that doorway. Sometimes a place becomes great not just because of the numbers, but because it's where humanity decided to finally stop and look at what it did. To hear more stories, you gotta subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, share it to your friends and family. And that's not the end of the video, but I'm gonna see you in the next one.